following up to an amazing talk by Mohan, which is a really difficult one to chase down. And like, our life isn't getting any easier that we're standing between you and lunch. So, cut us some slack. We've got a really, really interesting panel here talking about an area that I'm very passionate about, which is B2B opportunities, and especially in India. And I think picking up a thread from what Mohan said, right? I mean, we've got amazing entrepreneurs and amazing talent that has traveled to the Bay Area, created fantastic enterprises, are heading fantastic enterprises, right, from Microsoft, Google, and what have you. And I think the time has come for us to harvest this talent and create these opportunities from India that are making global impact, or rather, in fact, not just in the West, but all over the world, including China. So I've got a terrific panel right here, and without further ado, we'll sort of jump into their experience and their thoughts around B2B opportunities. So why don't we start with Partha, and please talk a little bit about your background and what context you have within the whole B2B and the startup space.
Thanks. My name is Partha Sarkar. I am the CEO of Hinduja Global Solutions, which is a services company which services mostly North American clients in health insurance, telecom, and consumer verticals. The thing that I find very interesting in the current environment has been our ability to use many technologies that has evolved in India into what we call the DTCX space, which expanded in the digital customer experience transformation space. And this is primarily around speech and text analytics, where we service probably millions and millions of transactions every year. And our ability to therefore use speech and text analytics to mine the data that we have of transactions that our clients, consumers have with their brand was limited till such time the technology was available. I mean, we were just doing some routine work. And now with this technology available today, we are able to take a lot of insights back to our clients' businesses. And many of these insights actually help them react, these brands react much faster. And this is typically on the social media space. Before something blows out, if you're able to track social media with tools like Sprinkler and all, and there are some Indian tools as well, much cheaper, you are able to predict how the reactions will be, and therefore you can forewarn the brand this is a storm that is evolving and you need to intervene right now. So a lot of technologies that we've been able to use from Indian startups have been deployed in servicing our B2B clients. So that's been a great experience so far. Very amazing, a lot of amazing technology available here.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Alok, Nandan. I'm one of the founding partners of Emergent Ventures. We are a seed stage fund based out of Silicon Valley, which does cross-border investments in the US and India in enterprise software. My background is I spent a chunk of time as a product guy in Microsoft and startups as well. From my vantage point, having done about 10 plus seed deals in the enterprise space over the last 18 months or so, I think AI is hot. We've done a lot of applied AI investments, and to Partha's point about digital customer experience, that is definitely hot. One of our portfolio companies is Observed at AI, which is on kind of the other side of it, helping enterprises with their voice data, which is one of the sort of the biggest chunks of data that is sitting in enterprises not being used. So that's in a nutshell. Applied AI is sort of one of our core thesis of the fund. Besides this, given my background and my partner's background in cloud infrastructure, that is another area that we are actively investing in, software-defined network, software-defined storage. Those are the areas we invest in.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. I'm representing NetApp. NetApp is a global leader in data storage and management. The organization I head is called the NetApp Excellerator. What we do is we help business-to-business deep tech startups in India and also internationally to actually go to the next level. India predominantly is known for companies that are in the B2C space, people who actually do the last mile delivery or solve problems that directly impact the customers, interacting with the customers. What we are trying to do here is there is also a breed of startups that are extremely deep technology based and startups that are solving business to business problems. They're in the infrastructure layer, and they are employing extremely deep classifications, I would say data classifications, or people also like to call it as deep learning, ML, DL, and AI. So things of that technologies that we actually help. Would love to talk about that a little bit, and I'm also here to interact with some of you and talk to some exciting startups as well.
Great. Well, and Ajeya, just picking up on that, I mean, you heard about all these buzzwords of AI, ML, deep learning, and so on and so forth. And when I was growing up, we had these waves, right? First, you had the software wave that I was fortunate to be a part of, where every company that was being created, or especially even going for listing, would be called some kind of a software company, although they had nothing to do with software. And then you had a .com kind of age where every company was calling itself a .com company. And now, as I look for investments, I find every company is a .ai company. Whether they have intelligence of any nature, forget artificial or otherwise, they call themselves .ai. So talk to us, Ajeya, since you're right at the front lines, being an accelerator, being so early. What are some of the applications, some of the company examples that you're seeing coming up that are actually impacting, our lives or the way that we do conduct business?
Excellent question. So we have worked with companies that are both from a seed or Series A or Series B stage, so companies that are fairly small to quite big. Essentially, when you look at AI, it's about trying to see how can you augment that human effort and then make it so repeatable that it operates at scale. So you're adding scale to something that can be done by a human being in one day, and you can kind of train your machine to do that in 1 minute, and then serialize it and make that same thing happen like 100 times faster, and then repeatability and stuff of that nature, right? So it's just imagine scale about doing something and it's being done by somebody else. It's just augmenting effort. So there are a number of companies that are doing it. Like we've had a very interesting company called Voltage. What they did is you have this legal process outsourcing that happens in India where people actually make calls, and what they do is that these are call centers in India that are actually going over legal documents and telling them, hey, this is expiring, okay, this is not a clause that you should use. Extremely mundane work, but this cannot be done by anybody else but humans actually going through the documents, understanding what is written in them, and then actually giving that advice. Now, this is a company that has kind of used AI and they have kind of automated that completely, where it just scans the document, it tells you what is toxic and what is not, right? So that's kind of automated. So another company that we work with through our cohort called Sigtuple, and they are into in the digital health space. So what they do is that they take you go to a pathologist normally, right? And then you actually give a blood slide and you wait for a day or 6 hours and then you get a blood report, right? What they do is that they have a smart microscope that actually takes a picture of your blood slide and that magnifies it, sends it to the cloud, and there's an AI algorithm that runs on it and gives you a report in a few minutes. And imagine this happening at scale and at remote locations. Very recently we have had another company called CardioTrack in our own cohorts that's kind of worked in creating a very smart ECG machine, which is no bigger than the clicker or the cell phone that can be deployed at any rural healthcare center that can actually read you, give you a 12-channel ECG that is extremely accurate. And because it actually stores everything in the cloud and has AI attached to it, it actually can trend it very well, and it can actually give a lot of intelligence on the ECG. ECG is a point in time, but this can actually trend it. So there are like numerous applications in analytics as well as in medical field that can be applied. So the sky's the limit, and we are just getting started. We just have to brace up for it and make sure that we are all relevant when it takes over. So that's what we got to be cognizant of.
Thanks for sharing. And in fact, it's very brave that these companies are selling to doctors and lawyers. I mean, Ishita isn't here, but it's a very hard nut to crack. And I would like to say that especially in the West, where these practices are a lot more ingrained, I think India is more experimental. So I'd like to say that the Indian community of doctors and lawyers are a lot more open to new technology and to new businesses. But I'll segue into asking this of Alok, given that you truly sit cross-border, right? You look at companies not from just an India lens, but really from a global standpoint. And talk to us a little bit about what you look for in teams, maybe coming out of India, and how do you deal with this constant comparison with Silicon Valley and India when you're looking at a global opportunity?
So one of the key criteria we look for in startup teams is resilience. A lot of startup is actually internal battle, not just external battle. And so if we look for signals in teams who have shown perseverance and resilience to survive, because a typical B2B startup is 7 to 10 years. So a founder needs to have the resilience to kind of push through those 7 to 10 years. So that's on the team side. On the skill side, it's interesting, we were talking about it earlier as well, right? That, a lot of founders coming out of India, they are humble, to the point of being too humble sometimes. And when you kind of compete on a global field, you have to learn the art of storytelling. And sometimes that storytelling takes a leap of imagination. You have to bring the audience to your side and tell them what can be, not just what is. And that is something I think we as Indians, whether we are in India or abroad, we need to kind of learn better articulating this storytelling from a what can be perspective. And that's something I think is I think a gap in the founders that I see quite often. Even though they may have great tech, right? But being able to tell that story in a way that brings the audience along is super important.
And absolutely, and we were talking about this on the side as well. I think that art of truly the elevator pitch, right? I mean, when you're stuck in the elevator for 30 seconds and you have to communicate what exactly it is that you do. And just a leading question following up with what you just spoke about is, do you find that when you talk about perseverance from the entrepreneur, do you find that there is a certain additional focus that Valley entrepreneurs have, or Israeli entrepreneurs have, vis-a-vis Indian entrepreneurs? And I think I'm picking up from what Devjani Ghosh talked about yesterday in her keynote speech, about how to do a lot of things and a lot of scale, but it's about time that we start thinking about doing it really the best.
Yeah, I think that maniacal focus on on solving one problem is something that I think it's also a function of the market, right? If you're building a B2B product for Indian customers, the expectation is you're sort of you present a la carte menu and the customer chooses, I want this, this, and this, and whereas if you're selling to sort of global markets, especially in the US, for every specific category, there's tens of competitors. So if you are doing sort of one solution that does 10 different things, you're going to be competing with 10 companies in each of those categories. And you will end up being sort of, 80-20 rule, or you may be mediocre in most of them, as opposed to being best of breed in one or two categories. Right? So that is something we kind of coach the founders coming out of India, that don't try to do the kitchen sink approach, right? Try to focus on one problem and be the best in the world at it. If you can, then you will be able to compete globally from day one.
Yeah, that's well said. Partha, I'm really happy that Mohan brought up the fact that, the whole services landscape was also innovative in its own way, right? And even though it was a very sort of labor arbitrage model, but it filled a hole and it kind of transformed the way that at least software was developed around the world. Now moving on, as we've matured, I think it's important for us to act as evangelists for new businesses coming in. And being part of that ecosystem, I just wanted to ask you, what, as an entity, how do you look to partner with young B2B startups? What are, let's say, 3 aspects that you would like to see in a company for you to be able to work with them, partner with them, and help them grow?
See, we took, the first approach that we took was trying to set up a corporate venture capital fund, and then try to invest in technologies that we felt that we would be able to use in our services space and really make it a differentiator for us. I have to say that that's been a very hard journey. It's just that in our DNA, being a services company, we don't have the 7-8 years that you talked about of staying power to remain invested to develop a product to the point that it becomes robust enough that you take there. And the way a services company is valued and the way a product company is valued is very, very different. So having learned that the hard way, now what we are doing is exactly what you just said. Rather than make, we are trying to see if we can buy. And when we say we can buy, we are looking at partners that show us technology and have great ideas and great technology. And I think the symbiotic relationship for us is that we have access to clients, we have access to markets, and we've got access to capital, right? So when we see something which is really good, a technology which can truly be differentiated, one of the problems that I've found with some of the Indian products that we've taken to the market is the use cases are very Indian. And that always becomes a little difficult to sell. Even though the business environment may be the same, because the use case is an Indian use case, it is difficult to sell it as it is. And therefore you have to spend a lot of time in your lab trying to develop use cases in your own pilots and POCs that you do to take it out to the industrial market. But yeah, that's been the latest that we've tried. We are working with some accelerator networks, like one of the networks that we are working with, Z Nation Labs. They showcase companies and technologies that we pick and choose, depending upon the level of relevance that they have to what we do. And we then try three approaches. One is either we buy out the technology, or we license it, or a revenue share, or a gain share. So those are the four models in which we try to work with them.
Thanks. And of course, one thing I must say, and I work with a lot of startups, is that as corporates, and I'm going to come back to you, Ajeya, is, I think a young startup puts all their life into surfacing a POC with a big company. And they, toil the soil and, come out ahead, and then they're waiting another eternity for the payment to come through. And then by then, that's kind of the kiss of death. So, a message that I think we should put out there is, startups are startups, they're young, they're nimble, and they're hungry, and they run out of money. So, the more that we can do to help them sort of expand.
I've been there. I know, kind of at a point where the guy saying that I can't do my monthly payroll unless you fund me.
Yeah.
And if you don't fund me, my payroll's gone, my staff's gone tomorrow on Friday. Please help me. I'll be there.
Great. So, Ajeya, in your view, again with deep tech and B2B, how do you see the role of corporates or academia coming out and sort of helping the ecosystem?
Yeah, this is a great question, right? So companies like us, or even companies like, let's say, Microsoft or Google, many of these kind of companies have the DNA for deep tech. So they kind of understand that they've actually built a business based on that. And by actually taking in startups and then mentoring them through the deep tech, there's a lot of give back that's happening. So if you look at our own startup accelerator, right? So we don't take equity, but we do give dollar grants, and we do give a lot of technology mentorship. With all the 18 companies that have been through us, I'm really happy to see that they are doing phenomenally well. Be it in autonomous driving versus digital health versus so many other things that we have been able to do, because the underlying platforms are deep tech platforms, and companies like us can really help that. So that's something that is a very smart move on the part of the companies to get associated, because they know what they can get from them. And these are basically product companies, right? The other part to that is also about what Alok was mentioning in terms of how do you actually market or sell yourselves, right? So what we do personally is that we actually bring in coaches from Silicon Valley to actually train them. And the motto is basically do a few things insanely great rather than actually doing a whole swath of things and then trying to see if one of them can get succeeded. So things like that. And corporates do have the responsibility, and we definitely feel proud to get associated with the startups that we are associated with, because this is a great way to evangelize some of your technology as well, and if possible partner and to join go-to-markets wherever possible. So it's a win-win relationship. And there's never been a better time to be a startup than it is now, which is something that I've been saying.
Yeah, I agree. And just to put a little bit of color on this myself, I think I'm a big supporter of integration between corporates, between academia and VC funds, and I run several funds. And one of the companies I'm proud to say that we just announced is called Simyog. It is in the area of a software solution for electromagnetic interference. You design sort of mobility devices and so on and so forth. But what was good about this is it's actually an Indian Institute of Sciences venture that was supported by Bosch, and we came in as Idea Spring Capital, and now it's become sort of tripartite IISc Bosch Idea Spring initiative with a great founder who was a PhD and runs the business. And I think we need more channels through help from folks like yourselves to be able to encourage initiatives like that. Partha, coming back to you, we talk about product, and all of us are obsessed with, product companies and the multiples, and again, like.ai now, it's about being products, right? And services seems to be a little bit of a done thing. We felt this all the time, and I'm sure you do as well. I want to hear your views on, have you had sort of pressure to become a products company, or at least sort of have some part of your business as a product business versus services?
What we try to do is try to build platforms, and that's a little different, that we use we've been in this business for 20 years now, so having serviced, let's say, health insurance clients or telecom clients, we really much understand what are the common themes that can help our clients do work more smarter. So we've invested in building platforms that we deploy for our clients' businesses, but product is a very different game. And I've tried to do it once, I've burned so much money, I won't do it again.
Thank you for sharing.
No, but as long as you're monetizing your platform separately than the services, then I think you're good.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
right.
And I think that's a good sort of next step for most services plays.
And see, that was I was telling you, the services companies are value different.
Yeah,
and
correct.
therefore the expectations of our shareholders of what they want from us is very different. And given that expectation from shareholders, it's tough to be investing and going on investing. And it needs a different mindset.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap up soon so that we have time for questions, but Alok, I'm going to leave the final sort of view with you, since there are a lot of entrepreneurs and sort of aspiring investors here. In your view, sitting between the Valley and India, what do you think, looking forward, let's say 5 years later, where are the opportunities for either entrepreneurs to start B2B businesses or investors to look for investing in B2B businesses coming out of India? In terms of global scale, technology, innovation, all those cool buzzwords that we'll be talking about.
Sure. So I think AI is as big as mobile. I don't know how many of you guys remember, but 10 years ago, people were saying, oh, mobile is going to change the world, right? And mobile did change the world, and now it's pervasive, right? I think AI will do the same over the next decade. Now that's like 40,000 feet level. What does it mean? Right? So every category that you can think of in B2B enterprise applications is going to be redone with AI first. That's what when Sundar Pichai talks about AI first, that's what he means. Every category is going to be redone. Does that mean you just slap on some machine learning algo on an existing workflow? No, it'll be rethought, right? And some of the areas where I think Indian AI companies can do better than anywhere else in the world is healthcare. Right? The access to data here is immense. There are too many hurdles for a healthcare AI startup in Europe or in US to start, right? Whether it's HIPAA regulations or whatnot, right? But over here, and because of the larger population base, you can do a lot more, and your algorithms can be much, much better in a shorter amount of time at scale because you have access to more data, right? So I think AI in healthcare would be one of those, and we've already seen, breakout companies like SigTuple and so on. Right? There'll be many, many more, right? And so that I think is sort of, where I think India has an upper hand, looking at, AI first companies.
Terrific. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'd like to open this up for questions since we've got an amazing panel here. So, you know, go ahead. Can we get a
My question is to you actually, because you have done the services business and for others as well. What do you think is the future of small and medium-sized software services companies going forward? Because on one hand, you know, there's very stiff competition coming from the MNCs, excuse me, the captives, you know, who are coming into India, throwing in dollars like anything. And on the other hand, there are, you know, big IT services companies who have already done a lot of this. So maybe 10 years ago, you know, for us, you know, when we started as a services company, you know, to grow to a point where, you know, we were able to grow the business from, let's say, from small to a sizable limit, you know, where we are about 100 people. But then, you know, taking the next step, you know, there are several challenges which didn't exist earlier. So what would be your advice?
See, I don't know whether I can give you advice. I can only just tell you that when I started with the company that I run today, that was in 2003. We were very small, about $20 million in revenues. And very similar in situations. We were competing for talent with captives who were setting up shop, HSBC, Standard Chartered, AXA and all of that. And they were willing to pay a whole lot more than a third party like us would be willing to pay. And we struggled for talent. I think one of the things that helped us is actually, while I say that we struggled for talent, I mean the equation with talent and you has to be very close. And therefore, if you're able to treat people differently, and I know that's a very, very motherhood statement I'm making, so I'm very cautious in saying that, I have been able to retain a very good team that's helped me build that business from a $20 million book of business to we are about $650 million now, competing with the biggest international brands in the BPM space and the biggest captives that have operated in India. It's just about being able to retain good talent. And you know, it's a long story about retaining talent, people who want to build a company. But if you're able to attract the right team, it is possible to scale. But it is, I don't know whether this is a replicatable story. It is not. It's a very personal journey. And maybe on a one-off discussion, frankly, I don't have a formula. If you tell me how it happened from a $20 million to a $650 million book of business, a lot of work, hard work, and a very good team.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My question to you, I'm listening many startups, entrepreneurs from yesterday till now. When it comes to investment, we see more volume or more attention towards only IT or intelligent AI kind of a stuff rather than manufacturing in a country like India.
I have a sneaky answer, I'll say. Because hardware is hard. It's really hard to scale it, right? There are too many moving parts to the business, and that is, I mean, for all of it, as such, a startup to scale is like climbing Mount Everest, right? And for hardware startups to scale is like, I don't know, climbing Mount Everest in another planet, right? It's just, there are too many moving parts and too many things that can fail, right? And that is why a lot of VCs, there are some specialist VCs that do hardware, and you know, I mean, I can connect offline and you know, talk about it, but I think most VCs don't do hardware because it's actually very, very hard.
No, hold on. So let me add to him, right? So when you say hardware, are you talking about hardware or are you talking about appliance? Appliance is a different thing altogether. Appliance is hardware and software bundled. Yeah. So manufacturing is a different thing, as I said. But for people who are in hardware now, they are thinking of appliance. Appliance is where you bundle hardware with software, and the software is a force multiplier for your hardware. And your hardware sells, but you actually monetize the software and things like that. So that's the way to think for hardware startups.
So we have time for one last question.
Gentlemen,
Thanks. This is because it's a B2B panel. I wanted to ask a slightly different question. I come from a slightly different B2B business. I run a small consulting firm. Yeah. My question, and I do have a take on all of this, but I really am interested in knowing what you feel is the future of consulting, strategy consulting, or the whole gamut. I run an HR consulting firm. That's a different thing. But overall, how do you see these consulting firms? The sort of fees that they used to demand and the thing that they used to provide, right? Do you feel?
Question brief.
Sure.
Short on time.
Yeah. So what is your take on this? Because this is a huge B2B industry by itself. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of consulting firms. I think the problem with consulting going forward is also going to be AI, because a lot of things that you actually recommend and say is something that will be available at the click of a button. So you will have to figure out how you want to do it. So like how people are trying to kind of evolve, and now there are people, instead of talking about let's say techniques to actually build something, they are actually using things like growth hacking, and they're actually teaching stuff like that. It's the same thing in a different modified form.
Let me add one more thought to it. You know which company is making the most money off AI today? It's a consulting company, Accenture. This was told to me by a Fortune 500 CEO. So whenever there's an inflection point in a technology, most money is actually made by consulting companies, because most CEOs and large companies, they don't know what this new thing is, right? So you as a consultant, strategy consultant, you have to keep finding the next inflection point and the next inflection point and get ahead of the game so that you can still make money, right? And then there is obviously AI in the picture. But
thank you. And one last thought to that, and before we end the session, is to your point, Accenture has a book called Doggery that talks about how AI and humans will work together in the future and create this sort of universe where everything coexists. So I think that goes along the lines of your question. But with that, thank you very much for being part of the panel. It was really great.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I request you to please step forward. And Mr. Anand Lunia, the partner of India Quotient, will felicitate our dignitaries, and Pradeep ji. Our next session, ladies and gentlemen, post which we will have lunch. So I request you to please stay put. We will be having the final session, and after that, I won't be in between your lunch. I promise you that. So, our next panel discussion is Beyond Digital, Building a Brand That Lasts the Test of Time. Our speakers, Gaurav Jain, founder and MD of Cooldex, Madan Dodeja, CEO of Vashi Electricals,